I think failure is a perspective that probably has been taught wrong our whole lives. I mean, I was reading a good article the other day about the correlation between a baseball player and learning how to deal with failure. And in the article, it said that if you hit the baseball 4 out of 10 times, you could be eligible for the Hall of Fame. You could be one of the greatest players to ever pick up a baseball bat if you only hit it 4 out of 10 times, less than half the times you've had it in your hand.
That's absolutely correct. 4 out of 10, by the way, is unheard of. It's even 3 out of 10, and you would be a Hall of Famer, one of the great players, today. And right, so they fail. The greats fail 7 or 7.5 times out of 10. But if you notice, when they walk back to the dugout and they go to sit down, they're not smashing their helmet, they're not smashing their bat, because they know and they learn that's what the pitcher did this time. That's what the defense, how they aligned, and they make adjustments. And they make adjustments knowing that they're just going to try and get 1% better the next time they get to try to hit the ball. But it's a great statistic, in baseball for sure.
Always use the athlete's analogy for failure because I feel like it's easier for people to see it in black and white. I mean, like you think of those teams that won championships, none of them ever go undefeated. Very rarely it ever happens. But I was scrolling through Instagram this morning, and I just so happened there was this guy talking about the origin story of the guy that made the Jingle Bells song, and he was saying about how this guy has genuinely might have the most pitiful life ever. I mean, everything he's tried has gone completely wrong. He's been divorced so many times, but he made one of the most iconic jingles in history. Like every year, same time, it will be played everywhere. And the guy was like sitting there talking about it, and he was like you won't like this guy only really needed to win once, and he never ever needs to win ever again. Like, even his children passing down the generation, they don't need to ever win again. He needed one. He might have failed a million times, but it was that one thing that's changed everything.
Think they say Thomas Edison, right? He had a thousand attempts at the invention before really coming up with a light bulb. And who I think about all the time whenever I think of failure, I think about the goalie in football or soccer. The goalie is only well known when they fail. They're blamed. They're trashed in the news, the media, the fans. Everyone hates the goalie when they give up a goal. And it's not that easy. You got 11 guys coming at you with the ball, kicking in a goal that is way too big. And if you give up one or two or, God forbid, 3 goals, you're considered a failure when it could have been the defense's fault. It could have been one of the forwards who made a mistake, turned over the ball. They had a break, but it's the goalie. It's the goalie who always gets blamed. And I'm not saying it's fair or unfair, but that's a rough position.
Do you think tennis, because it's so solely individual based, it's better at teaching people about life than maybe the other team sports?
I would say that there is not pros and cons, but there's certainly benefits of playing an individual sport. If you're playing tennis, golf, bowling, chess, whatever, you're relying on your own instincts. But I actually enjoy having to strategize, make decisions. And yeah, very often I made the wrong decision, but it was me. It was me that made the decision. So this is one of the reasons why our company and many others, we really like to hire former athletes in our for our sales organization, and also for quite a few other client facing roles. We actually seek out athletes, former military, also sometimes for the discipline aspect of it, but for also that accountability factor in athletics tends to be pretty large.
But when you're seeking out these athletes to work in corporate jobs, is there maybe like a warm up period for them? Are they maybe not quite ready to let go of the sport and come into the corporate world?
The answer is yes, sometimes. Especially if you hire someone, coming literally right out of the sport, or someone, coming right out of graduating their university. For sure, because it's a huge adjustment. And it's a huge adjustment in many, many different ways, let alone you're working in an office or you're going in the field. But going from the court or the field to the boardroom certainly is an adjustment. But one of the things I feel that athletes bring is the ability to adapt. Because when they're playing their sport, the other team brings in a whole new defensive scheme, and you have to adapt. The conditions change. Is a 30 mile an hour wind is going to affect how you play that particular day. So the adaptability factor, I feel, is one of those characteristics that athletes tend, nothing, never say never, never say always, but athletes tend to bring the ability to adapt. It's one of the reasons why we like them so.
What do you think that the normal person who's maybe not that far into the athletic scene is missing that the athlete has the edge over in that realm that you're talking about?
I believe that sports brings some great abilities and characteristics to their careers. I believe that you can borrow from your experience in sports, but that is not, it's not mutually exclusive. I feel that having a passion for something can be equally as rewarding and equally as valuable that you bring into your workplace. For instance, I think I mentioned in my intro, I have three children. One of my children, my daughter, she's a very passionate athlete. She plays soccer, she plays volleyball, she's good, she's talented, but she's passionate. One of my sons, Blake, he is extremely passionate, but about fashion. And my other son, Kyle, he is very passionate about, he's an artist also, making movies, making content. That's his passion. And I feel you could be passionate about anything. And that's going to teach you because, for instance, Blake in the fashion world, you think the fashion world is not ultra competitive? So just like sports teaches you competitiveness, being a good sport, knowing how to lose, knowing how to win, Blake is so invested in his fashion that he's getting a lot of those same lessons, as well. So that's why, success is success, and it can come in many different forms and from many different forms.
The athlete almost has a natural instinctive about passion. They know what it is. They know how to be competitive. But say for like the average person that's not an athlete that maybe hasn't fully developed that competitive edge yet, is there anything you can say from a past athlete standpoint that could help a normal person develop that? Because I do feel like there's a lot of people walking around without it.
Fortunately or unfortunately, the world is competitive. And if you are a marketing professional, or you're an attorney, or you are customer service for an organization, chances are there's going to be someone who wants your job. And chances are you may want to move into someone else's job. My advice, my suggestion is just get a little better every day. Work on improving what you do every day. If you could be 1%, half a percent better tomorrow than you were today, look, that's the epitome of success. Keep improving, keep learning. There's all this talk about AI is going to take my job. AI is going to, replace, okay, maybe some of that's true, but if you're concerned and if you're professional, then maybe learn AI. learn how to be the ones who develop or the ones who feed the information into the artificial intelligence and automation. So, yeah, my biggest piece of advice is you don't need to be competitive with the world. Just work on yourself, better yourself. I think that makes people happy.
The theory of being 1% better, though, it opens the door probably more than the natural instinctive approach to failure. And that's something that I know the average person really struggles to deal with. An athlete is a little bit different because they're so used to it. It's almost you have to have it almost every day to get better. But from your point of view, is there any real way to learn how to handle it?
There's some corny expressions when it comes to failure and success. Like, it's not how many times you fall down, it's how many times you get up. Show me a winner and I'll show you someone who failed many times. Albert Einstein said failure is success in progress. Hopefully, most of our audience today knows who Roger Federer is. He's one of the top two or three tennis players of all time, of ever. And Roger Federer, in his career, he won 54% of the points that he played. That means one of the greats, the career greats, lost almost half the number of points. He lost 46% of the time. It teaches you so much if you're in it. Of course, you want to try to win it, but when you achieve, and I really consider failure to be an achievement because it means you're trying. Nothing beats a fail but a try. I mean, there's expressions, for days. But I do feel that when you experience a lot of failure, it makes you stronger. It makes you more resilient. And it is keep making that 1% improvement and you will, however you measure success, you're going to have a much better chance to succeed. So I do believe that, and again, doesn't need to come from sports. It could come from fashion. It could come from, anywhere else, but putting yourself out there and trying your to the best of your ability.
We're talking about these things that there's a huge element of control involved. I mean, you can still control your actions in all these situations. You might not be able to control the outcome, but it's the same kind of premise. But you're in a world now where you don't really have much control. There's not as much as you can put your own input on. You don't really have any say in the outcome realistically. Did you have a learning period to adjust to that because you're used to being playing tennis? You have the racket in your hand. Whatever happens, you've done it. So did you have a period where it was a bit hard to get used to that?
So, yes, coming into the corporate world, I did have to adjust that it's not all about me now. It's working within the team, within the culture, and we need to put the right people in the right places. And that sometimes goes your way, and sometimes it doesn't go your way. Bringing some of the characteristics, needed, on the sports field. Okay, well, what do? Number one, Number one, you have a short-term memory. It doesn't help to get angry, throw staplers, or that doesn't help anyone, anywhere. It may feel good as the staplers flying through the window, but then, certainly, you got to clean up the mess. So getting that short-term memory instilled, which by the way, I feel a short-term memory is excellent to have in failures and also in great successes. Got to get back to it. Got to repeat those successes and avoid those failures with maybe some adjustments, strategies, proving, that your team, your culture can be adaptable and adapting enough to change the failure, uh, maybe even an even playing field, and then moving towards success. So for me, myself, coming from an individual sport, it was a big adjustment.
I know you mentioned in your intro that there came a point in your pro career that you realized that it's not going to pay the bills and you have to find something else. But whether you like to admit it or not, to get to that level, you have to be a pretty elite athlete to get there. I mean, not everybody gets there. So I'm always fascinated about this, about the links between the elite athlete and elite corporate leader. And you've been now around both. You've seen them both of them. You've worked inside and out of both of them. What are the similarities emotionally, psychologically? Is there things that it really does share and cross over? Like, is there just traits that you just need to be in that position?
Here's maybe my biggest one, and it's holding yourself accountable. Being accountable for you, your team, your company, yourself. That's something that I came into the corporate world with. And again, I may have come with more because I played an individual sport. My self accountability was off the charts because I couldn't look to my left or my right to blame anyone. It was me. And by the way, this was not easily learned by me because when I was a young lad, I blamed the referee. I blamed the weather. I blamed the racket that I was holding, my sneakers, my shorts. I mean, I blamed the net was too hot, everything. And then, I learned it's not the net. It's not my short. It's me. It's me. And I need to do whatever it takes to make sure that if I lose, did the very best that I could. And when I would win, it was because of my efforts. And when I would lose, it would be because I failed to strategize. I failed to execute. My mind wasn't as strong, or my body wasn't as strong as it could have been. So it got me back in the gym. It got me to, improve my mental strength because of my self accountability. And I feel that's one of my superpowers, the short-term memory and myself holding, me accountable. I feel those are two of my greatest strengths coming into the corporate world.
What have you noticed about the top athletes and corporate leaders about their ability to handle pressure?
One thing I learned early on in tennis is don't focus on the score. Don't focus on where you're at in the match. Focus on the strategy. And that's really, even in the corporate world, that is the right attitude to have. How are we going to execute our game plan in our company today? Not tomorrow, not yesterday, today. How are we best going to execute? That's what we should be focused on. If we focus on, ooh, our ROI is down 13% this year, or the CEO is angry because we've only hired 17 people this week instead of 24. You can't think like that, because if you do, you will get nervous and you'll be scared, and then you will not perform at the best of your ability. So what I took is, okay, we only hired 17. We need to hire 24. Now we need to hire an additional 7 next week to become whole. What do we need to do? How many resources do we need to apply? How many candidates do we need to interview? And let's go out and execute that. If you're focusing on how to execute, what to execute, there's really no time for nerves, at least on the field and in a competitive, environment. But our payroll department does that. Marketing, IT, cybersecurity. I've noticed that the top performers, they don't really get nervous. They get excited. They're passionate, but the nerves are not really there. And there's nothing wrong, with being nervous. And maybe it's even the terms that we use. Some people use the word nervous. Some people use the word adrenaline. Some people use the word passion. You know, I understand that nerves exist, but if you can focus on the strategy side, it does help.
There's a really good Twitter thread I read 2 nights ago about the science backing nerves, and there was a really good point on it that people have somewhere wrongly branded nerves, and specifically the butterflies you feel in your stomach and your chest whenever you're coming up to something big. And people automatically think, oh, it's overthinking. I'm not prepared. I'm not ready for this. But the science is now backed that that is actual overexcitement. Your body is so excited about going to do this, it can't handle it. So it's giving you a different feeling. But everybody now, for some reason, sees it as it's a bad thing. But like you've mentioned about the nerves in in both worlds, how can people manage those nerves? Because there are going to be a lot of people that they just buckle under that pressure.
And the people always say, if you're putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, you're helping yourself, because if it's uncomfortable, chances are you just haven't been there. And look, there's examples of Roger Federer, for example. He's hit a double fault before because he was nervous. Sometimes your mind goes astray, and yeah, you let your thoughts be your worst nightmare. But for example, next week in San Diego, California, I have to speak to like over 200 sales professionals at our company. So yeah, I will have those butterflies. I mean, I'm not going to, certainly not going to misrepresent. I will have the butterflies, and I'm going to feel, the nerves, and I'm going to hear the little buzz in the room because there's so many people there. But man, I also enjoy it at the same time. And I think loving what you do really helps, because then the passion comes out after you get started. But those 10,000 hours does a lot to help with those nerves. If you can put yourself, if it's a fear of public speaking, if you get nervous, about cooking a certain dish for your loved ones, you just get out there and practice that dish, practice the public speaking, and the nerves may not go away, but it'll be manageable.
I feel like when people hear that big number, 10,000, it almost makes the nerves worse. So I knew it was going to come up. So I found a better way of explaining it, because there's a Japanese ideology of if you spend 18 minutes a day in any discipline for a full year, you're better than 99% of the world in that discipline. It's so simple when it's put like that.
And luckily, I'm not gonna argue with you, because if I was like a 13-year-old, you know, kind of getting good at tennis, not great yet, and if someone would have told me 10,000 hours, I think that could have intimidated me a little bit. So I love the, 18 minutes, and that's why I love the 1% a day. Just get a little better. So when I was 13, I had some great coaches around me, and they would say, all right, look, let's just get the backhand a little smoother tomorrow than it is today. Let's work on the serve so it's a little faster, a little more control. And those micro lessons, before I knew it, when I was 16, I was really becoming a great player. And it was in those micro lessons. I do agree with you, those 10,000, just the vastness of that, it could have been intimidating. So I do like the smaller goals that you could put in front of yourself that you can achieve and have those many successes instead of just waiting for the one huge.
I've done a few episodes like this where I've had ex-athletes talking about what they've learned about life through their sport and stuff, and I already know now, like the back of my hand, the excuses that are coming in the comments and under every clip. But this is something that I never asked them, that I want to ask you specifically, because you're in a different world now completely. But how much of success and just in general is talent versus mindset?
Yeah, that's a great question, because early on in my tennis journey, I was told I didn't have enough talent, to make it. Now, look, I took that as a insult, and it made me angry, and it made me more determined, to be honest with you. However, you do need to have some sense of innate talent, to be able to be successful in anything. It doesn't even have to be sports. It could, again, in your career, in your hobbies. So if you have that innate talent, okay, great. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do? And in sports, a lot of people think it just means you have that physical talent, that you're strong enough, you're fast enough, you have the right body for that particular sport. It's not always true. You also need the mental side of the equation, as well. Now, I believe the physical and the mental certainly can be worked on. And sometimes I feel in my case, I started the sport a little too late, and maybe my talent just ran its course and I came up to a very high level. When I meet 99.5% of the general population, I would be the best tennis player in the room, but I wasn't good enough to be the top 200 or the top 250, where that's how much that's how much that's what I would have needed to do to make enough money, again, to make, and one of my coaches, told me that talent sets the floor, mindset sets the ceiling, how high you can take it. And, I kind of agree with that. It doesn't mean that everyone, when they're 5 years old and they want to be the next Michael Jordan or LeBron James, it doesn't mean that they definitely will. It's a great mindset to have, but sometimes there are some limitations.
You hear stories of people that are so talented they just never made it. Why does it seem like the most talented people in like their area or their country, they just don't seem to get to that level where they can showcase it?
Boy, there's so many reasons in sports and in life. You know, um, Again, it can come down to the talent, but sometimes you're right. You see just a talented player, a talented coworker, just a talented student, and so many distractions in life that it could affect your work ethic. I mean, what's more important than work ethic in becoming great at anything? I mean, if you're playing the violin and you come home in the afternoon and you look at the violin and you're like, I don't feel like, playing, and you just play once a week, chances are you can never be great. And that's something that people don't see, the behind the scenes work that goes on. You know, Lionel Messi did not just appear as a soccer god. I mean, I can only imagine the work that Messi, and taking him, just as an example, Messi does not have the perfect body. He's not a physical specimen. If we wanted to create the perfect soccer player, we would not create the body of Messi. He's a little height disadvantage. And look at what this guy has done in that career. So, but for every one Lionel Messi, how many soccer loving kids never made it past college, past high school, for so many reasons, peer pressure. They want to go play with their friends. They may have decided that their studies were more important than soccer. And, there's a lot of reasons, but, if you have the dream, look, the one thing I have, which I'm very happy about, I have no regrets. I feel I took my tennis as far as it could go. And eventually I hit the ceiling, which, by the way, at the time was not an easy pill to swallow. I was not happy about it at all. But looking back, I think I gave it my all, and it's made for a happier life moving forward because I don't have those regrets. And that would be my advice to some of those very, very talented people. Don't have regrets. Give it your all, leave it all on the field, and do your best to make your dreams come true.
When you look back at your time in tennis, what lesson specifically in that sport do you look back on now and you never really fully appreciated it?
Okay. Embarrassingly, I did break quite a few rackets. I would just smash them on the ground and I would smash them into the fence and one day my parents literally took my racket away for like a week and they wouldn't let me step on the court. So that was a good, that was a good lesson. But if you're asking me, right, what's the, my biggest lesson, it would probably be the don't dwell on what just happened. Let's focus on what's going to happen next. Because uh, I took it took me a while, maturity wise, mostly. I needed to get more mature to realize that I can't change the past. I can affect the future. So that was a huge lesson for me, both from a winning standpoint and a losing standpoint. When I was younger and I would win over someone that I wasn't supposed to beat, very often I would lose the next match. I'd be too cocky. I'd be too confident. I'd be like, whoa, I just beat that guy. I, this guy coming up, he's got no chance. I remember saying that to myself. Now, how bad of a strategy, of a lack of preparedness could that have been? So again, as I matured, as I got better and better coaching, and they would work on my mind as well as my body and on my strokes, I would say that, and that has served me tremendously well in my career post tennis.
In your like entire life, obviously playing tennis, being a coach, and now being a former corporate leader, you've had a kind of create a philosophy for life in a way. If you could boil it down to one sentence, what would it be?
I'll boil it down to wow. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, hold on there a second. Okay. So I would say that my leadership philosophy it's fairly simple. Show extreme clarity to your team. Make sure that everyone understands what accountability means. There's the old KISS theory, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Violent execution, which I could explain in a second, and the relentless pursuit, what's possible, what's possible that, we could do together. I would say that's my coaching philosophy.
Well, we've had the end of the episode. Walter, where can people find you? What have you got out and what's coming in the future?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking that. So, yeah, I can be found at Venture Employer Solutions, which is the largest private HR outsourcing company in the world. I also can be found at one of our companies, Salvo Global, which has grown from starting about 8 years ago to over 40,000 employees today, working for over 1,000 U.S. companies. Hire Finder, which is one of our recruiting solutions, that's a company that we created also to help small and mid-sized businesses with their recruiting issues, challenges. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and I have another little known fact about me. I believe, and I'm going to challenge your audience to prove me wrong, I truly believe I'm the only Walter Sabrin on the planet. So I'm easy to find. I mean, no one names their child Walter anymore. So that's like, difficult to find. Sabrin is a made up name that my parents, when they came over from France, they made up Sabrin. So I truly believe you will not find another Walter Sabrin out there. Google me. It's easy to find. Contact me on LinkedIn or Facebook or through our career website at venture.com. And this has been a great conversation, really solid questions that, I enjoyed hearing and talking. And I just want to say a big thank you.